Uh-huh.
I'd like to call the September 25th, 2023 Peachtree City Planning Commission meeting to order. If you'd all rise and please say the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to thank everyone for attending this evening. I'd like to thank our city councilman for his presence this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Go straight off to item 2. Any additions or deletions for this evening?
No, sir.
No? Okay. I know we do have announcements and reports.
That's right. We have, as you all are aware, but maybe not the public, Mike Link, the chairman, has stepped down, and that went into effect last week. And so, as per ordinance, our alternate is automatically moved up to fill that seat for the rest of this year. And so Andrew Chris will be joining us as a voting member tonight.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Very much. Wonderful. Okay. Anything else?
That's it.
Everything? Okay. Item 4, approval of minutes. Any changes, additions, deletions to the minutes as they were sent out?
We did not receive any.
Okay. Council members or commissioners, you have received the minutes. Any questions, comments?
No.
On them?
No.
Okay. If not, do we have a motion for approval of the minutes from September 11th?
I move that we approve the minutes for September 11th, 2023.
Okay, we have a motion for approval. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. We have a second. All those in favor of approval of the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Minutes are approved as presented. Okay. So moving right along, item 5, public hearing, PH 2307, zoning text amendment to create short-term rental permit and process. So I need to go through the public hearing procedures. If you give me a second, I will do so. When the public hearing is opened, members of the Planning Commission will become hearers. No action on their part is in order until the chairperson declares the hearing complete. The chairperson will allow each side equal opportunity to the floor. Individual members of the public will be given up to 5 minutes to state their case. First, city staff will present the request and provide an assessment of compliance with city code. Next, those supporting the issue will be heard. That includes the applicant. Then those opposing the issue will be heard. Prior to closing the public hearing input portion of the meeting, city staff and the public will be given an opportunity to ask questions of either or both sides of the issue. When the chairperson is assured that the input is complete, the public hearing shall be ended, and the Planning Commission may then debate the issue and render a decision. All speakers from the public are asked to follow these rules. Come to the microphone and state your name and neighborhood prior to making remarks. Keep remarks under 5 minutes, and please try not to repeat each other's comments. And finally, address all comments to the chairperson. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So to begin, I think it's important that we all are on the same page and understanding, and it's important, I guess, to define what is a short-term rental. And so this is actually defined by the state as any home or property or room that is rented to a person for less than 30 days at a time. Colloquially, they're kind of people may call them Airbnbs or VRBOs, but there are, I think, well over 80 different platforms that actually list these types of rentals, short-term rentals. And this is a picture of just a handful of those popular websites. And the reason that this is a city council initiated text amendment, and the reason that they are recommending or putting forward this new regulation is to protect the health and safety of both our current residents and visitors, and as well as to preserve that residential character of neighborhoods. This has been, there have been a lot of discussions at the council level before we even started this public participation process. It was initiated by council in April of 2022, stating that some form of short-term rental regulation was desired. Staff presented draft ordinances in June 2022, in May of 2023, June of 2023, and again in August of 2023, where council came to a conclusion that they felt that this draft ordinance was ready to go through the public hearing process, which we're starting tonight. So we do have our public hearing tonight, and then the final public hearing in which the City Council will make their decision is currently scheduled for October 19th. So you all received a copy of the ordinance, draft ordinance, and so first and foremost, it creates a short-term rental permit. One of those do not exist today. So that means that there will be all existing short-term rentals that are occurring today must get a permit. There's no kind of grandfathering in. And short-term rentals are going to be allowed in any residential property. So any zoning district that has residential uses in it or residential property. And that can be a whole house or bedrooms or a few bedrooms or a basement. We do not requiring owner occupancy of that structure or home. However, there are some limitations on what can be rented out as a short-term rental. There are no accessory structures, no pool houses. You may call them pool houses, some people call them guest houses, or maybe a mother-in-law house. No tree houses, not being flippant there are actually some places that do that. No tents, no RVs, nothing of that nature. In addition, there would be no subleasing. So you wouldn't be able to, say, rent a home and then as the renter, you turn it into a short-term rental. Council agreed on a maximum of 1.5% of all residential structures in the city could be rented out as a short-term rental. Of our current count, this is based on the tax assessor data, and at our current count of 13,000 plus residential structures in the city, that equates to 200 short-term rental permits could be issued at a time, at any one time. And as the ordinance states, this will be on a first-come, first-served basis. Obviously, those that are renewing, if they renew within their time frame, they've already got theirs, and renewing, there's not a question of whether or not they'll get it if they renew within time. And to be clear, it's a certificate or a right that is given to a person, not a property, so it will not carry with the property in the same way like a variance carries with a property. So one of the really important things is mitigating the potential negative effects that short-term rentals can have on neighborhoods. And so one of the ways we do this is by requiring what we call a local contact person. And this is someone who is 21 years or older, and they must be available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and must be able to be at the location, if requested by the city, within 1 hour. So this means that this person cannot be located in, let's say, Valdosta, Georgia, unless they've got a helicopter or something, or California or something like that. They must be, like the name says, a local person. Some questions have come up on whether or not this would require that person to be have their license with the state of Georgia, which is like a managing agent. That's somebody who does the leasing, who does actual financing and property management of that you can certainly pick a managing agent to be your local contact person, but it does not have to be somebody who is registered with the state, or licensed, I'm sorry, with the state. So it, just for some clarification there. And then I put here that the part of the process is this information will be public to the residents within 500 feet of the property, as well as the people who were actually at the property. So if they need to get in contact with them, this is a published number. So there are some minimum standards of the facilities that are being established. There will be no parties or special events permitted in a short-term rental. So you cannot rent out a property and then have a rager at the property in which you sell tickets, or even have 100 of your best friends come. That will not be permitted in a short-term rental. All parking associated with a short-term rental will have to be off-street and on a paved surface. Garbage, some of the properties that we've had situations with, prior to us introducing this possible legislation, is that garbage tends to accumulate and become an eyesore. And so we're requesting or regulating that all garbage be kept in a lidded container and screened from view of a public street. Only a bedroom can be used for sleeping. And this is defined by the building code. That means that you have to have a functioning emergency egress window. There's 70 square feet for the first person sleeping there, and 50 additional square feet per each additional person, with a 3-person maximum per bedroom. So you may have on occasion perused one of these sites and seen, let's say, like a basement room just lined up with bunk beds. That will not be permitted in Peachtree City. They'll also have to post our noise ordinance and the parking requirements on site so that the visitors are well aware of these restrictions. And then there's that phone number of that local contact person must be posted. So moving on to the application requirements, there will be a criminal background check pulled on all property owners or agents of the LLC if it's a corporate-owned facility. There cannot be any convictions or NOLOs within the last 5 years on felonies or crimes of moral turpitude, and there can not be convictions or NOLOs within 2 years on misdemeanors, but that does not include traffic citations. So there is a fire marshal inspection that they will have to pass, and which we'll go over some specifics in the next slides, as well as the code enforcement, which is actually a building inspection. They have to sign an affidavit saying they're going to pay the local lodging tax. Up front, most of the major listing platforms do this because it's a state law that requires it to be done. But this allows us to capture the few who may be not using a major platform. And then we'd like to get a copy of the guest occupancy agreement. This is actually, and I think this might surprise folks, this is actually required by state law. And at the minimum, the state law requires that you record who is there and the dates of when they're staying. Ours does go additional to get to make sure that they include notice of some of the local laws, like the noise ordinance and parking and special event prohibition. We want to make sure that folks have as ample knowledge of the city's rules. So here is what the fire marshal will be looking for. And this has been discussed at all of the council workshops. Fire extinguishers must be clearly visible, and there has to be one per floor. These are national standards. There's nothing new or that our local fire marshal has added. The smoke alarms have to be interconnected, and they have to be inside and outside each bedroom. And if you have appliances that use some type of propane or gas, and that can include gas fire logs, then you have to have a carbon monoxide on each alarm on each level and outside each sleeping area. Safe outdoor cooking procedures. No fire pits or grills on decks. Fire pits have to be 20 feet from combustible material, and a hose has to be provided near that fire pit. Now, this can seem above board, but our neighbors within the last year had an incident where the renters, short-term rental, went to sleep, thought they had put out the fire pit. It caught fire of the house. They had to jump out of a second-story window and spend some weeks in the spinal center. So this is important to make sure that our visitors are protected. There have to be safe means of egress. Means that you can't block stairs. Doors have to be able to, just like when you go to a hotel, you can turn the handle and get out. And there has to, again, there's that functioning window. And safe electrical practices, that's not a generic term. He actually has specifics listed there, such as no use of extension cords for permanent wiring. All of your electrical boxes have to have plates. They can't, be exposed wiring. Code enforcement will also be looking at the property. They're going to make sure that if you have a pool on the site, that there's some type of, the safety fence is working, hot tubs have a cover. Here's where they're going to do an inspection of that bedroom to make sure that it has that egress window, and they're also going to make sure that they'll establish the maximum overnight residency for that permit. They'll look for that paved parking, that garbage storage, that house numbers are posted, and postings of the short-term rental or areas set aside, and other property maintenance codes. And these are codes that are currently existing in the city. There's nothing new here. I like to think of it as, if you walk on your stairs, are your foot going to go through the stair? Is the handrail secure? Those are the types of things that they're looking for. One of the things that we did change since council asked this to move forward is originally we had set it as come January, everybody in the city is going to have to get their permit renewed, similar to like your golf cart or your business license. However, because so many licenses come due all at once and all those inspections are due, our staff was kind of voicing some concern that they wouldn't be able to get all of them done within that 30 days. And so we are recommending this minor change of going to a 365-day permit that starts on the day that it's issued. So you can come in any time of the year and it's good for a full 365 days. The fee is $400, and that includes your fire marshal inspection, your code enforcement inspection, the first of those. City is responsible for collecting all of those residents' addresses and mailing all of the residents within 500 feet and doing that background check. The annual renewal is also a $400 fee, and it's a reminder that those fire marshal inspections and code enforcement inspections are required at that time as well. And there's that 30-day grace period, but after which there's a $75 late fee. There's a 3 strikes you're out enforcement. So this is 3 strikes over a 12-month period. The maximum fine for each strike is assigned, so that's a $1,000 fine per citation. And after your 3rd strike, you would have the permit for that site revoked for 24 months, and the owner or the local contact, whichever the one is the citation is going to, would not be able to apply for another short-term rental anywhere else in the city for 24 months. So as mentioned, this is sort of the beginning of the public hearing process. There's been a lot of discussion of the council in public, but there hasn't been a lot of public discussion. And so you all are doing that favor for us tonight. And we have the option here. This is not a time restrictive. It's not like a rezoning where we have an ordinance that says you need to act within 30 days or the council needs to act within 60 days. We don't have that time restriction here. So right now we've advertised, because we have to advertise so much in advance, a public hearing for that October 16th date. But that if you all want to continue this item, have further discussions at a further date, that is definitely an option for you. And on that, I know you all, we received an email, we've received one email to the Planning Commission with 5 pages of comments. And I have gone ahead and put those comments here, but I didn't know if you wanted to, Chairman, have public discussion and then we go through these, or however you wanted to proceed before we kind of went through these bullet points, or if you wanted to go through these bullet points.
Well, and it's one thing I'd like to, I guess, reach out to my fellow commissioners. I know I honestly had a very short period to take a look at the email when it came out this afternoon. I would probably expect most of you also are in the same situation. I'd like to go ahead and open up to public first, and then see where we're at that point in time, for and against, and then we can kind of make a decision whether or not we want to go ahead with the email and go through item by item, or go ahead and look to do something a little different for we have a little more time to digest it, I guess I would say. So, okay. With that being said, I'd like to go ahead and start the public comment. Input for those supporting the issue, or do we have anyone supporting the issue? No? Supporting. Supporting, yes. Speaking in favor.
Is there going to be a second question of those that are not in favor of it?
Yes.
Of course.
Okay, since we have no one in support, do we have people who are opposed to the issue? Okay. If you would please go ahead and step up to the microphone. Again, give your name and the neighborhood prior to making your comment.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Mike Murtaugh, The Terraces, Peachtree City. Thank you for allowing us public to speak. Consider me Switzerland. While I'm against this particular ordinance, I'm not opposed to an ordinance, a common sense ordinance. My background, I've lived in Peachtree City for 25 years, raised our 3 sons, had a business for over 10 years in Peachtree. I did run an Airbnb in 2017-18, so we no longer do that, but we do have long-term rentals and movie studio over 30 days here in Peachtree City. So my neighbor today up the street has an Airbnb. So I'm both a neighbor of an Airbnb and have run Airbnbs or short-term rentals. So quickly, the basis, I've been following this a long time, since its inception, based on the famous, now infamous, Smoke Rise Party House. So this ordinance was hatched in my mind for that particular reason. But it's no longer the issue at point. If we look at the standard definition of a short-term rental, which Robin pointed out, it no longer fits what this ordinance was originally crafted to avoid. And what struck me as a citizen in love of this community is that the ordinance in sections 917-7, paragraph C, in the proposed ordinance says, and I have to ask a question, if you look at that section, say, why is the city of Peachtree City, through this section, providing convicted pedophiles, drug dealers, sex abusers, felons more privacy rights than a Peachtree citizen short-term rental operator? That put the hair on the back of my neck. So this is the whole idea of sending, does Peachtree City mail out a notification to homes in a 5-foot distance from a lot line for these convicted felons living in Peachtree City? They do not. It's illegal. But we're going to allow the city to mail out a similar letter, and in the ordinance it doesn't say, to let them know, to give them the contact information. It's how to file a complaint. And I don't know if you guys make this makes you uneasy, but it does me, because it pits neighbor against neighbor. You're asking the neighbor to watch that house, and here's how you file a complaint. Whether it's someone smoking or, it could be petty things that aren't even in the ordinance. And that scared me. So we're giving more privacy. In order for us to find out if one of those felons living next to us, we have to go to a database. And I've asked council several times, I'm available from my background in the rental market to a business owner, somebody that's lived in Peachtree City 25 years. There's a simple procedure here. We have to register, we have to get a permit. Robin just said it. You make the city notified that if you're concerned that the house next to you is an Airbnb or a short-term rental, contact the city. They have a list. The police department will have that same list. And I've asked over and over, we've created an ordinance, and I've never heard real facts, data, about how many police calls have been made specifically to short-term rentals in the last 12 months. How many sex trafficking? With all due respect, Council Prebor has connected, whether inadvertently or directly, that sex offenders hang out in short-term rentals. It's been said many times at council meetings. That is just fear-mongering. It's not accurate nationally. So we're causing these perceptions that short-term rentals are evil. But the council even told me one-on-one, they've all stayed at Airbnbs at different times. Even Mayor Leonard owns one. So what is it that makes us such bad people, or perceived the short-term? And again, it kind of comes back to that smoke rise issue, which again is not in definition a short-term rental. So if we have a registered short-term rental, the database is, the police can use it, the public can use it, but access it. When we register, we show that we have valid insurance. That's nowhere in this ordinance. We show that you have an affidavit or certificate active for a rider, which we have on our property, a rider that says we can use a 30-day or longer with our agent, or a $1 million umbrella. So again, the whole safety issue is, if you're on a platform as well, they're going to watch to make sure the guest response, the host response, if there's a safety issue, a flagrant one, it's going to come out under these major platforms. So there's checks and balances already. We're required to do that to get the tax revenue, and we're asking the city to spend more of our tax dollars to track people, and we don't even know for sure how many there are, 10 to 100 in town. We've created an ordinance without fact. And I just hope
time has
that the
expired.
commission would
Thank you for your
respectfully
comment.
consider pulling back, requesting that a restart based on facts. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else in opposition? The microphone, please.
Thank you for the opportunity to stand before you this evening. And
You could, I'm sorry, if you could state your name and your
yes,
neighborhood.
sorry. Yeah, my name is Chris Anderson, and I live in Burnham Woods. Been here for 20 years in Peachtree City. We found this to be home. We love it, and we've raised our kids here, and we have no desire to go anywhere else. This is our home. So our founders wrote the Constitution of the United States, and our representatives pledge to uphold it and to defend our God-given rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that includes the Bill of Rights, among which is the Fourth Amendment of the right of property. My wife and I recently had the opportunity to go to Normandy, France, and to see the D-Day invasion sites. And we're reminded of the lives and the blood that was spilled and sacrificed for the freedoms that we have, and to make sure that those freedoms could be maintained and given to those people and to us, that we could maintain those freedoms in the Constitution. How are we showing our gratitude for the freedoms we won back and defended with their lives? In regard to the Constitution, Benjamin Franklin was asked, coming out of the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia, what kind of government would be proposed. And he said, a republic, if you can keep it. Can we keep our republic? A republic is a representative government led by principled representatives, voted in by the citizens of the community who make decisions on our behalf to help us maintain a hard-fought liberty on the price of the best blood. Our laws written should simply help maintain our safety and security. However, to maintain a republic requires a moral people to rise above corruption and selfishness and greed. We propose that Peachtree City is filled with such moral people. We can maintain an effective republic here. When city ordinances are created, are our representatives seeing us as a good moral people, or do they imagine us to be selfish and greedy and irresponsible? What kind of people are attracted to our Peachtree City? I would say that both startup families and mature families, the same desire to live here and enjoy the best parts of what we have here in Peachtree City. We're a freedom-loving people seeking the safe haven of Peachtree City for our loved ones. However, there is a fine line to be drawn between safe and free, because regulations can limit and even reduce our freedoms. I would propose that in a morally strong society, stiff regulations are not needed. A principled and responsible people are able to mostly govern themselves, where you have a community who try to keep the two great commandments of loving God and loving your neighbor. As I feel we have here in Peachtree City, a need to force good behavior is unnecessary. We're mostly all here because we love our community and the people in it. We are a people who are attracted to live here because we want what Peachtree City offers. Again, we love the pathway system. We love the good schools. We love all that we have here and want to lift up and love one another. Can we all agree that we want to maintain the joy, freedom, and safety and security in our neighborhoods? How is that done? I think the best way to start is through the golden rule. What about those who were wronged as a result of the Smoke Rise Party House? No, it was not all right that they suffered for almost 6 months of fear, and also a result of the types of the people coming into our Peachtree City to disturb the enjoyment of our community. However, I believe it has been learned that the owner had allowed the house to be rented to somebody who then sublet that house and didn't realize that his tenant had been subleasing it as a party venue until neighbors alerted him of
Your
it.
time has expired. Thank
And
you
allowed
for your
that.
comment.
I guess the last point I want to make here is that in wars, freedoms are lost. Let's not go to war over this, but rather let's reset and relook at making this a sensible solution. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else who wants to speak in opposition?
City Council. My name is Lois Bredemeyer. I live here in Peachtree City for almost 30 years, all right? The question that I have that I would love to ask the council to explain is why there is such restrictions on one entity, one business. They're extremely hard to understand why, we have to send out letters to the people in our neighborhood that we are the only business in Peachtree City or in existence that has a monetary fine. Nobody else has fined any monetary fees for any of their violations. Even the health department goes in and has a point system. And if you have so many points, then the health department will come in and shut you down. Airbnb has a lot of requirements that we have on us as far as the fire marshals and safety. And we agree that we would go along with those, and because it's safety for us and safety for, the guest, all right? So, but one of the things that we also have to do is the citations and the recording of the violations. How can you monitor those, even if you have somebody that's going around every day? How is somebody going to be able to say, okay, I have a visitor, or I have an Airbnb, or a friend of mine is staying for a night, okay? How are we going to be able to differentiate who the guest is, who my family is, who my visitors, who drops in? And it's actually crazy to be able to be monitored so strictly. And I don't understand how no other business, whether it be a bed and breakfast, has nothing of this. This is not anything to do with a bed and breakfast, and they're doing the exact same thing that we're doing. No hotels have the restrictions that we have. I think that it would be beneficial if we all sat down with the council and explained some of the restrictions that Airbnb puts on us for safety, and our requirements to meet their needs, as opposed to just having something created, restrictions, and when they don't even understand the rules that Airbnb puts on us. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have anyone else who would like to speak in opposition? Please come forward.
Name's Sean Freeman. I live in Bradford Estates. We've lived here for about 2.5 years now. We kind of came up here for work after COVID, purchased our dream home. Our home has a detached structure. It's a pool house. So it's kind of number one on my agenda is kind of addressing as to why we have such a ordinance that's limiting, detached structures. I don't see the difference between a basement and our pool house. I think it's actually, I think it's better in some regards for safety reasons and stuff like that. But, the restrictions that the city is putting on these things it's limiting our ability to make money. It's my wife's primary job right now. Like she was saying, Airbnb puts a lot of effort into regulating the rules and procedures, like the fire marshal stuff. We already have to do that and prove it to Airbnb with the carbon monoxide detectors, smoke detectors. I think one thing that would behoove the council, and maybe this commission as well, is sitting down with a handful of us so we could explain what we do and what we have to do already to try and comply with what Airbnb likes and VRBO. And I'm a little less familiar with a couple of the other operators, but that's who we use. And then just to kind of address, who we get at our Airbnb is largely family members of people that already live here, family reunions, grandfathers, grandmothers that have grandchildren locally. They come by, they use our facilities at our house. We have a large play set that we invite them to use. So, I think the fear mongering that's been presented is by and large unfair. This city does not attract, convicts and pedophiles and things of that nature. I had one interaction with Mr. Prebor, and it was kind of frightening, to be honest with you, when he came to do an estimate on my house for something. And, his viewpoint of sex trafficking and how that's occurring, and, illicit movies are being shot in my Airbnb and stuff of that nature. I didn't know how to respond to that in that moment. And the fact that we're now dealing with this as a city level is scary. So I would encourage the commission and the city council to really, go by what this gentleman said and kind of start from the ground up. Because I'm not opposed to regulation, but I think by and large we have to do it sensibly. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else who would like to?
Hi, I'm Laurel Sorensen. I live in Waterwood Bend. I just wanted to introduce myself and voice my opinions as well. We just moved here a year ago. I was raised here, and I was so determined to move here and raise my children here. We are a young family, and buying a house here was difficult because it's so expensive, but we were willing to buy whatever we could in order to live here because it is so special to me, and I want my children to have the same experience I had being raised here. So we bought the house we did knowing we were going to have a lot of renovations done, and we were doing them ourselves, and we prioritized Airbnb to be able to fund these renovations for our family to live in a safe home in a safe location. And I just want to echo what our neighbors have said and reiterate that no one is more concerned about who is staying in my home than me, because my children and I are upstairs, and I am very concerned with who is staying downstairs in my basement. And we have had wonderful guests. We have had terrible guests. My experience with the terrible guests, once I found out they were doing something that was against my rules, I was able to kick them out within 30 minutes of me finding out from the problem, and Airbnb backed my concern, and I was able to be refunded for cleaning. Airbnb was very helpful in my issue with this guest. So I just want to say that Airbnb, I personally work with Airbnb. I have found that it's helpful to work with them, and they are concerned with who is staying in our home as well. I also just had a question about, on the ordinance, they say for a citation, there's a $1,000 fine, another citation, another $1,000 fine. I would like to know more information about what is a citation. Does that mean that it's a complaint from a neighbor? If I have 3 neighbors who have a specific grudge against this, does that mean if they give one phone call, then I have to pay $1,000? I also feel that, okay, I'm like, I don't know what that is. I also wonder, shoot, I lost my train of thought. Oh, someone in the city council mentioned that $1,000 would be chump change and that it needed to be higher, and I just wanted to voice that that is not chump change for my family. My husband is a senior engineer. We are a young family and we just graduated, and that is half of our mortgage. So it is not chump change, and that was offensive to me, and I want everyone to know that I probably wouldn't be renting out my basement if $1,000 was chump change. I'm not angry, I'm just so concerned if that's the mindset of the people making this ordinance. I just would like to have a conversation like was stated before. Oh, I'm so nervous, and I've never done this before, but thank you for hearing me, and I'm thankful for this opportunity.
Thank you. Anyone else speak in opposition?
So my name's Donna Littleton, and I live in Lakeside, and we've been here 22 years. And I just want to let you know I have an Airbnb here, and the type of people that stay at my Airbnb, like some of the other people have said, are people that are either coming here to visit their families, grandparents coming to visit their family, or family that moved away. It's mostly family, or they're coming in for a soccer game. I've had people that have flown in actually from Europe that are going for medical treatment at some of the hospitals here. That's something that's been popular. The biggest thing is what you said, is this thing about notifying people within 500 feet. I mean, that is just plain crazy. I mean, that's just inviting the people, the neighbors, to say, oh, you know, spy on this house, and let's take pictures, and let's find a reason to make a complaint, and this house could be trouble. I mean, why? I mean, nobody even knows that my house is an Airbnb. I mean, they may pick up on it, the fact that there's linens going in and out every other week or so, but other than that, there's really no other way that they would even know. The people that stay at my house are so nice, and they're just I mean, they come back, they're regulars, they come back like every year, at a certain time of year because it's, an anniversary or it's a birthday or it's, Christmas time. I've got people that come back or for Thanksgiving. So, they want to come back and see, it's just, they're regulars. They just come back to visit their family. And they moved away and they know that they're close and they like my house and I'm just happy that they want to come back and be there and to go and notify the people that, who knows, maybe the person that 500 feet away is renting long-term and now they're going to be spying on my short-term person. I don't know, it's just stupid. I don't know why do you want to have people spying on my house? That just doesn't make any sense to me. So I have a real problem with that. But I just wanted to say that, and we actually own we're a property, I'm a broker, I'm a real estate broker, and I feel like it's a real invasion of my private property rights. I feel like it's, we manage over 500 single-family homes all over Atlanta long-term, and it's, I don't know, it's just, this is just, I don't know, I don't speak as well as you did. What you said was awesome. I just ditto everything he said.
Thank you. Anyone else? Opposition?
Hi, good evening. My name is Angela Yoder. I'm the president of the Fayette County Board of Realtors, and I'm here tonight speaking on behalf of hundreds of our members that live in Peachtree City, where part of our organization's mission is to protect private property rights. We are concerned that the short-term rental ordinance, while we recognize it has been improved from the 2022 draft ordinance, we're still concerned that there are issues identified in the 2022 draft that remain unaddressed. I'm going to try to give an abbreviated summary of those concerns. The first concern is the right to rent. Among the core rights that a property owner has is the right to rent their property on a temporary basis. Georgia courts have consistently recognized that property owners have the right to use, sell, or dispose of their land for any lawful purpose. This ordinance would significantly impact Peachtree City's residents' right to rent their property by treating it as a privilege that requires a permit rather than a right of property ownership. The ordinance is also still written in violation of Section 36-74-30B of the Georgia Code that protects residential rental properties from investigation or inspection without probable cause. This section of the Georgia Code also prevents local governments from requiring the registration of any rental property for any reason, which is still included in this ordinance as a requirement to operate a short-term rental in Peachtree City. The local contact person is also another concern. We remain concerned about this because the proposed ordinance would unnecessarily place a local contact person in harm's way. There's language in the ordinance that basically says the owner or contact person has to, well, maybe not put themselves at risk, but you can't guarantee that they won't be at risk. So while responding directly to reported complaints about noise disturbances, rowdy behavior, or other improper occupant behavior in an attempt to satisfy the response requirement of the ordinance, they could be putting themselves in harm's way. Okay. In fairness, we should adopt an ordinance that applies citywide to all properties when it comes in regards to noise and vehicular traffic and parking in residential neighborhoods. Not one that singles out short-term rental properties for more restrictive regulation treatment. As a practical matter, the potential noise, parking, or other impacts of large-scale gatherings are the same regardless of whether it is gathering that is held in a short-term rental, a long-term rental, or by the property owner themselves. The city does not appear to impose a background check requirement on any other type of permit or license apart from applicants for pawnbroker licenses. It is presumably not required, it does not require landlords who enter into long-term leases with tenants to submit a background check. So if, while the city may intend to use background check as a way of determining whether the applicant has been convicted of felonies, crimes, or moral turpitude or misdemeanor, it is worth noting that other moral turpitude provisions of the city code, which is section 50-204, does not appear to require an applicant to submit a background check. So if an applicant for a pawnbroker's license does not have to undergo a background check, why should a short-term rental permit have to do that? We have a concern about real estate licensure. The managing property, the person that's managing the property, technically should hold a real estate license. And it appears that the person acting as the local contact person under this proposed short-term ordinance could be considered a licensee under the language of Georgia law section 40-40-3. Basically, as the law states, the ordinance could be perceived as suggesting a short-term rental
Your
owner
time has expired.
run
Thank you for your
afoul
comment.
of the state law, and their property manager is not a licensee, so their property manager should be licensee. And then we also have concerns about Fourth Amendment rights. We do appreciate everything that you guys have done so far, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else speak in opposition? Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Denise Anderson. I live in Burnham Woods. My husband spoke before. Our short-term rental, majority of our neighbors already know that we have this short-term rental. I've had many calls over the years just saying, hey, they're parked in your yard, hey, this, and I am on them right away. We had this house as a long-term rental for many, many years, and I had way more problems with long-term rentals people than I had. Honestly, I've never had any problems to speak of with my short-term rental. So that was one of the reasons why we changed and went to short-term rental, because we had way more control over our property. We have to have this income to be able to pay the mortgage. Like Laurel says, $1,000 is not chump change in my pocket. It's a lot of money. I am constantly monitoring my property. When I know someone's in there, I do a drive-by almost every single day. So if that doesn't tell you how much I am monitoring my property, then I'm not sure if any of these other people do drive-bys on their property when they have people there. And no, I'm not spying. I'm just making sure my property is taken care of. I think many of these regulations that have been proposed are astronomical. They're just not even viable, in my opinion. I think that there needs to be a sensible meeting brought together by short-term rental people and council, city council meeting people, the commission. So that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to speak in opposition?
Hi, I'm Chris Littleton. I live in Lakeside Drive. I've lived here 21 years, raised two wonderful girls in this community. I think it's an absolutely fabulous community. And I'd just like to start off with, I manage properties with my wife, Donna, but I think this is an overreach and it's and an intrusion on individuals' property rights, and I am not a big fan of the permitting fees and citations. If you're that concerned with this issue, remove those costs and require the permits. The permits can be free. The citations can be free. I don't think we really need that much monitoring in these types of properties as well. I mean, I think that this is just a huge overreach. And if you really, if you want to set the expectation as well, I think everyone in Peachtree City should be grandfathered in. I have lots of friends that live in Peachtree City, and they're like getting to that age where they're thinking about a second home, but they don't want to sell their properties in Peachtree City. They love this place. They come back on a regular basis. So it's a great opportunity for them to be able to keep their properties, have some decent income on it, pay their property taxes. So that's one of my concerns as well. So whenever we do these kind of things, it affects property values as well. Whether you're taking away somebody's right to make income, and there's a lot of individuals out there that are reaching the age that I am, and they're ready to, they may want to rent their house out for 2 weeks or a week, and they're gonna miss that income. You're gonna mess up their opportunities to stay Peachtree City residents. So, but I'm not a big fan. If you're serious about this, take away the permitting fees, take away the citations. I don't care if somebody, I don't mind the 3 strikes and you're out, but don't make it a burden to your citizens. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to speak opposition?
Good evening. My name is Mark Bronson in Kedron. I'm the guy who sent you that 5-pager, and I apologize for that being so late this afternoon. I support what's been said before me in regards to the problems with this, and in particular, I have a problem with the due process situation. It can be sent out. A mail violation can be sent out. The hearing can be 5 days from then, and every single day, one of those days, you could be fined $1,000. It's just mind-boggling. Honestly, that's worse than any HOA protections are given. Also, there are a lot of inconsistencies in this. Something that doesn't make sense, I think would be very important to you, is that the requirement in there is for a hard surface parking area. Why not a permeable? Why doesn't this duplicate Section 909 in regards to spaces where you can park a vehicle? It doesn't make any sense. I understand that the attorney has reviewed this, but I don't know that the attorney has a clear understanding how things work. Being able to provide I guess, home address is not practical. We don't receive that information from at least the platforms I'm aware of. I don't know that anybody's actually gone through this, and at least down at city council or maybe within the city, and considered whether any of this stuff is practical. I mean, why on earth can we not provide packaged food, granola bars, stuff like that? That's even prevented in here. So for those, and as you are aware of so many other reasons, I request that the process be restarted. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to speak in opposition? No? Okay. I'm going to declare the public comment period closed, and I'm now going to open it up for the planning commissioners to go ahead. And I'd like to go ahead and start with our newly minted Commissioner Chris.
Are we doing questions or comments? How would you like to structure this?
Let's go ahead with questions first, and then we'll go ahead and make comments as we usually do. Thank you.
Got it. Just a question for staff, a couple questions. Does the $400 permitting fee actually cover the cost that the city incurs in the inspections, or is that lower or higher than the costs?
The 400 feet does not cover all of the cost that this permit would be incurred by the city.
Do you know what the cost actually is to the city?
Well, it's $100 per hour for inspections. And then, the cost to mailing would vary depending on the property location. The annual monitoring service, which is just a basic monitoring service, is $7,000 a year. And then there's any kind of calls for service out to the property that may be incurred, for special cases, like if there's an incident or something.
Is that monitoring service, that's 7,000, is that the background checks for?
No, I
that's
didn't
separate?
actually include the background check
How much
cost.
is that? How much does that cost?
Well, we have a system in place, and so really we don't have to buy a new system in place, and so that ends about being $75 per call for service is what it is called.
And the background checks that are contemplated are really only against the owner or the person that's going to be doing the renting, not the actual renters.
It's not for the renters.
Okay. That's all the questions that I have.
Okay. Commissioner Hamner?
Sure. Hey. So just two questions. First of all, it had been mentioned that we didn't have a complete understanding of how many short-term rentals are in Peachtree City. Do we have a number or any additional information around that?
I have, because of the third-party monitoring service, I have gotten a couple of complimentary scrubbings of these websites, and the first one was 96 and the second one was 94.
Got it. My last question. Yeah, you gave the example earlier about the fire pit and the issue that had happened with that. Are you aware of any other?
And that was not in Peachtree City.
That was not in Peachtree City?
That was not. That was our neighbor to the north.
Okay. Are you aware of any safety issues or health issues that have happened within Peachtree City's limits?
For short-term rentals, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And just to add on to that, are you aware of any crimes or anything like that associated with our short-term rentals?
So this question was asked at the last workshop, and within the last year, I think this information was shared with City Council. I don't have the number
Sure.
exactly, but if it was 0 or close to 0 within the last year to short-term rentals specifically. There was one that was made, they thought was a short-term rental, it ended up not being.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Reeves?
Yes, thank you. Two of my questions have already been asked and answered. I think the only other question I have is the ordinance, the draft ordinance that we're talking about right now. Are there any other counties or cities or municipalities surrounding us with similar type ordinances?
I would not say that they're similar. There are the municipalities around us do require either a short-term permit or it's permitted by right, but they have to get a fire marshal inspection. They are considering it in South Fulton. And then the other examples that we scoured were just from the metro area, but not necessarily our immediate neighbors.
Okay, and to follow on the fee, the $400, how exactly did you come up with a $400 fee as opposed to $500 or $600?
It was the time for inspections, and I took the cost of that annual cost and divided it by what I thought would be a normal number of short-term rental permits that we would get.
Okay, and lastly, I heard quite a bit about the Smoke Rise Party House. Can you explain exactly what happened there? Because I'm not very familiar with it.
So it was early 2022 and late 2021, and residents of nearby the property expressed concerns to city employees and elected officials about what was happening at the property. It was, come to find out, it's owned by somebody who doesn't live in the country. It had been rented out, and then this person who had rented it then hired a managing company who then rent out the property basically for parties. And they set up the house, I mean, when I say every room had a bed in it. And so there were multiple police calls, multiple calls for service from code enforcement, for garbage and whatnot. And it took us a while to get in contact with the property owner because of their location.
Okay, and I guess the last question I have along that line is, it seems that, just my take on it, that some of our commenters felt as though that was the impetus for this ordinance, the smoke rise incident. Would staff agree to that?
So I started in 2017, and one of my first jobs when I got here was to draft a short-term rental ordinance. It was a very different council. It was a very different, so this has been discussed at a staff level, since, well, before I got here, but at least since I've been here.
Thank you.
Commissioner Johnson.
Both of my questions were answered.
Okay, thank you. In question to staff, and I think this kind of ties into part of it into the jurisdictions. When this was being drafted, were those reviewed and taken into consideration as to what they look like, whether if it was South Fulton or Marietta or any else of similar?
I mean, I took a look at ordinances from all over the country. And so some of them are clearly, like, Denver or coastal towns are clearly destination resort type of destinations. And then I looked at our nearby, what's happening in Sandy Springs, what's happening in Roswell. So it was a mix of all. Basically, I was just trying to see what tools were out there and what could work for us.
Okay. Thank you. Second question, a lot of the commenters, speakers brought up that they are already, I guess,
required to meet minimum
required
standards.
per Airbnb, correct. And that's great, and that's great from that standpoint. And I think I know what the answer is. I pretty much know what the answer is. But what jurisdiction, if any, does the city have over what Airbnb requires?
Oh, I see. So Georgia is a home rule state. So our power generates from the state, and they have given every municipality the right to regulate land use, which includes how do you use residential structures. So can we require more than Airbnb, which is what I'm thinking? Yes. And in my previous life, before I even worked for the city, I myself had a short-term rental, and I know that you can require more than what Airbnb requires.
Okay. And I guess as a follow-on to that, if there would be no ordinance, we wouldn't have anything. How would the city, if at all, know in its current processes what homes were Airbnb and what regulations were under those?
No, we wouldn't. I mean, the best it would be is me sitting at my desk going to Airbnb trying to find properties.
Right.
And then, because they don't reveal the addresses, and we would have no tools.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Comments? Commissioner Johnson?
Reservation,
okay.
go ahead.
Good, Felicia.
And I am a Johnson too. My maiden name.
Oh,
is
okay.
Johnson.
Well,
That's why I respond to Johnson sometimes.
Sorry about that.
I'm
Commissioner
sorry.
Reeves, go ahead.
My comments are that I think this is certainly something we need to look at deeply. With the emails that we received today, I have not had enough time to really deeply look at it. So I do. I think it's an issue that we need to look at further.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson?
And I agree. I do feel like we didn't really have a lot of time to prepare, or research, read, do our due diligence. to really speak intelligently about it, so.
And I know
great.
that the council had multiple workshops, and we went through every little item kind of checklist by checklist, which is sort of what I had started to do with the response slide. I didn't know if you, because I'm hearing kind of the desire for more information, and I know there were some questions that were asked too that I could respond to.
Sure. Let's go ahead and get the comments and then see what direction, like I said, we'd like to go ahead. Commissioner Chris?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I just want to thank our neighbors for coming out and speaking to this. It's always helpful to have public comment. I think this has been in the sphere in the city for quite some time. I think we've had some opportunity not only to watch the city council go through these motions, but also, it's been in the materials for city council and for this meeting. I think that I'm in support of this generally because I think that the zoning serves a purpose, right? And I think that if we allow too much of this, it's a slippery slope and it potentially changes the nature of our neighborhoods. I live down the street from one of these and I've seen issues come up. I've had people come to my door at 2 in the morning. And so it's an issue I think that needs to be addressed in the city before it becomes a problem. So I'm in support of this. I think that the fines are a little high. I would think that we probably need to reduce those fines if we're going to recommend approval of this to the city. I would propose maybe 500 per instance instead of 1,000. But I do think that we need regulation here. So that's my stance.
Okay. Mr. Hamner?
All right. How much do you want your local government to tell you what you can and cannot do with your property? It's at the core of this. I think it's appropriate that we do understand as a city in terms of how short-term rentals are within our community. And I think that there are some things within the ordinance as it's drafted right now that are appropriate. For example, section 917.6 under the application for a permit. Again, understanding whether the address of these areas, whether the owner is a legal resident of the United States. I think all that information is fine. It's not burdensome. But I believe overall that the ordinance as is currently written is a solution in search of a problem. It doesn't make sense to single out one group and then to overregulate them. As mentioned in the comments, there's a number of things in here saying, like the 500 feet from the property line, notifying everybody around there. And I know that there's city council members that have spoken up against that as well. That's burdensome. That's overdoing it. Also, the fees associated with this, again, with the violation seems to be really high. And as we were talking earlier about the cost for the taxpayer, yeah, I mean, of course, we'll be able to make some of those funds up through taxes, but it's overkill in terms of the way that this is written right now. So instead of over-regulating, we should sanely regulate the short-term rentals in a way that respects the rights of the property owners and still serves the community. And finally, I just want to say that I believe that the draft of the short-term rental ordinance right now is not based on fact, but more on fear. For those crafting and ultimately deciding what this ordinance is going to be, I encourage them to look at the facts that have been discussed tonight and look at a way that short-term rentals are currently being operated within Peachtree City. We began this meeting by saying that short-term rentals are being discussed in relation to the health and safety within our community. Before we overregulate them, we need to show that this is negatively impacting our community and then make a right decision from there.
Thank you. In my comments, I see both sides. I personally don't have short-term rentals. I've stayed in one Airbnb, I think, in the state of Texas one time. And I understand the desire and the rights of property owners, to make a living, to do certain things with their property that is allowed under the law. I also see the other side where sometimes we need a little bit of regulation, but how much is too much? I think where it really comes down to it. And I think there's a lot that's in this draft. There's some good, as the commissioners have said, and there's some things that are not good. And how do we come together as a commission, as council, as city, as residents, to come to an understanding and come to an agreeable outcome that people can do things, but still we do have some oversight. We do have to have some regulations on things. It's not, I don't want to call this the Wild West because it's not, but we do need to have some regulations on things that we do. I'd like to see some more work done, and I don't know exactly what that looks like and how that's accomplished, whether that's additional discussions, whether that's another workshop. I don't know where this goes from here. I'd like, honestly, some more time on my side to kind of go through, especially the comments that the gentleman put out there this afternoon. Thank you for those. I really didn't have an opportunity with the timing of this and everything else to really go through each ones, and I know Robin staff has gone through and tried to work those out. And I think it's something we definitely need to take a look at. I guess the question I have to the other commissioners, do we want to go ahead and go through those items at this time? Do we want to go ahead and do a continuation so we have some time to actually go through with what staff has put together and ask some questions? Really would like to get your input honestly as to what you're looking at this point.
I believe it would make sense for us to go through those comments and look at them. The way that they're structured right now is, again, they're very specific on these points. And of course, we've gotten a very good overview in terms of what this ordinance is, what it contains. I think it could be to our benefit to really look at some of the details that we haven't discussed tonight, and then to make an appropriate decision from there.
Okay, good. Is that good with everyone?
Yes.
Okay. So,
Okay.
Robin, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to you.
Okay, so I'm going to go through each one, and he starts at the beginning of the ordinance and works down. The very first one is that there's language that says the short-term rental, a permit is required for each location, and he recommends changing that to each premises, and that is fine with us. Premise is defined, he's correct. Premise is defined, location is not, so. The minimum age of a local contact person, mentioned about, what was the basis of being 21 when Georgia recognizes an 18 as being an adult. I believe that this is a policy decision and not necessarily one that staff is equipped to recommend one way or the other. I think that from a staff perspective, 18, 21, 35, it doesn't matter to us. But I think that that's really a policy question to kind of direct towards council.
So should we discuss each one of these in line?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine. What do you
I
think?
think 18 is too young. I think it should be older than 21, to be honest, but I think 21 should be the minimum age for someone who's a local contact person. As a senior in high school coming to your house and your Airbnb and saying, oh yeah, I can fix a problem for you. It seems kind of silly.
18, they're still an adult. They're not drinking a beer,
Yeah, well, of course, but I mean, 18, it just seems too young to me.
Do you have any, so what I can do is I can, at some point, whenever we do convey your recommendations, I can convey sort of this for and against. It doesn't necessarily, unless you all want to do some type of roll call vote.
On each item.
On each one.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, so then the next one is one that we heard a lot tonight, is this 500-foot notification. Now, he recommended that the applicant provide the list of that residential properties, nearby properties, and I actually feel like that is burdensome on the applicant or that property owner. We have a tool that's available, and so I recommend that we keep this. Now, this doesn't address the big question on whether or not we should keep the 500-foot notification at all, which is what we heard tonight.
So let's talk about it, right? So first of all, it's just a notification, right? It's just, hello, I'm going to be doing this now. It's not providing any additional, right, requirements. It's just a notification. Do I understand that correctly?
Right, it is a, let me get the specific language. City shall mail a notice to all residential properties within 500 feet, notifying them of the short-term rental permit and providing information regarding how to lodge complaints regarding the short-term rental, if any. So what we would do is say, here's the code enforcement number, 8 to 5 a.m., Monday through Friday. Here's the non-emergency number for the PD, other hours. Always call 911 if you feel of safety, and then here's a local contact person.
So, I mean, no surprise, I like this, right? Because I think that folks within a certain amount of space, we can discuss the actual amount of space, but folks within that amount of space should be aware of how to contact the city with an issue. Once again, we're changing the potential character of a neighborhood by allowing a business, practically speaking, to operate in a residential neighborhood. Right? So in my opinion, I think the notification is important. We can talk about the feet, but I like the idea of the notification.
I guess a question or comment and a question. Would anything differ than a resident contacting code enforcement as it is now for what they would feel would be a violation of whether it's their neighbor?
Well,
or a business?
Sure, yeah. You can obviously contact code enforcement with any issues, right? But this is alerting the neighbors that if there are issues specifically relating to the short-term rental, that they can read the short-term rental ordinance, learn about it, and then contact with specific issues that relate to the short-term rental ordinance, like garbage, like parking,
Like, I get having this for if the owner doesn't live there. But if the owner lives there and if the people are just going to be in their basement, well, I mean, my family could come stay for 3 weeks in my basement, but I don't need my whole neighborhood to know about it.
Right.
Right? Like, so I
you're
feel
not-
like
but
it
you're not
maybe it should
renting to your
apply
family,
to
though, right?
just if they're going to be the only ones there and the owners don't live there. But if they're just going to be someone coming in there in part of your house, but you're still living in the other part of the house, is that necessary?
Yeah. I'm thinking about the intention behind this. You were saying a moment ago, it's notifying people that there's a business being run. I have a neighbor across the street that owns that rows of beans. It's a business that he owns, built onto his house on that. Why is this group being singled out?
Well, we could also regulate that, but I think that the intent here in my mind is that we are protecting the neighborhood from the slippery slope of parties, right? The slippery slope of people
Sure.
utilizing, right?
Like I said earlier, I think that this ordinance is based on fear and not on fact. Again, we've already heard that there are zero crime, zero health and safety issues that have been recorded within the city. Like, what are you basing this on?
Well, I think, once again, I think when you,
Shh, please allow them to have their discussion.
once again, I think when you have a residential neighborhood, right, you're using it for single-family purposes, right? If your family coming to stay in your basement is one thing, but a different family coming to stay in your basement every day is another thing entirely. And I think it changes the nature of the use of the property. And when we're talking about zoning, which is what we're responsible for, I think we need to think about these things. And we need to think about how it changes the use of the property and the nature of the neighborhood. And in what I've seen, not only in my street, but also in other neighborhoods and other communities throughout the country, is that it has the potential to change the nature of the community and the neighborhood. And so I think that these kinds of regulations, yes, I think some of them may be too strict, but I think that they are valuable and they stop the slippery slope from occurring. I agree that there's some fear, of course, that comes into play here, absolutely. But, I've seen it firsthand, not only elsewhere, but in my own neighborhood. And so, I'm asking you guys to consider, these kinds of, I think, what are common sense regulations for letting the neighborhood know that the nature of the neighborhood is going to change, potentially.
So,
Potentially.
Yeah, potentially.
If I could, Robin, when a homeowner decides that they want to rent their house out and under these guidelines has to get a permit and pay the fee. Will the city at that point have a list of those people who have paid the fee and are permitted to do these type of things? Will that list be available to anybody? in
Absolutely.
Peachtree City?
Yes, ma'am. And we can do that, you know, like we do for permits now.
Right.
We issue a monthly report. We can post it online. And of course, anybody can make an open records request. It's public information. Okay. The next one, stop me if you're not ready to move on. The next one is the background check requirement. He was not a fan of this. He would like to allow other types of background checks. Again, I mentioned previously, we already have a system in place. I'm not sure of any other types of criminal background checks. I will certainly ask what the PD, but you know, staff recommendation is to, you know, if background checks remain to be required, that we'll just do it through the PD like we do for, we actually do that, we do them for, he mentioned pawnbrokers, but also the massage parlors. We require background checks.
And so, quick question, if anything comes up on that, then they're not allowed to?
Well, no, if any felony within the last 5 years comes
Okay.
up on that.
Okay.
And they have, the PD has a definition of what moral turpitude is. I am not a criminal expert at all, and so wouldn't be able to give you specific examples, but they know what they're looking for. And so what happens now when they do them is they send us back, basically, we don't get to see that. We just get a notice from the PD that says, all clear or not clear, need to discuss.
Robin, I know there were a couple comments and concerns about the infringement on, you know, personal liberties when it came to the background checks. Anything from city attorney
I mean,
in that regards?
No.
No? Okay.
Okay, and quick question to go back, sorry, to the 500-foot notification. Did you find in your research that there were many other places that also did that? Or
Not many.
Okay.
I mean, a handful, but not even a majority.
Okay.
Concern about giving the planning director the ability the discretion to require other types of state permits. Somebody has to decide what state permits are going to be required. My recommendation is that we keep it at the permitter level, you know, the director level, rather than the city manager or city council. And this is just for, you know, some of the language you see in ordinances is trying to allow some discretion for those unique situations. And so why would we ever want to require additional permits? I can't think of any right off the top of my head. They're already included in the ordinance. But just in case something ever comes up 5-10 years from now, this is kind of generic language. We recommend just allowing it to stay. Swearing an affidavit, or an affidavit swearing payment of taxes required to recruit. He recommended removing this requirement. You know, this was something, paying of local taxes is an important thing to city council. This was something they wanted. State law already requires the major platform users to do this. So this is just a form for those very few who may not use a major platform. Other information be required for an application by the planning department. He would like to remove this entirely. This is basic permit language. Every building permit that we issue, this language exists in there for the building official, just for those, like I mentioned, those kind of unique situations that may come up so that you don't have to go through the variance process and whatnot. So we do recommend keeping this. Several of his comments were concerned over the revocation process. And so these next three are about that. that he is concerned that there is in the revocation ordinance section, it mentions that any violation of the ordinance could be considered a violation, and the city manager could hold a revocation hearing. This is straight from their legal team. I would not recommend making any change to that. Yes, please.
So I believe that the individual who recommended this obviously is trying to clarify in terms of what misrepresentation is. Like if there was like a minor misrepresentation.
Right.
Well, yeah.
I mean,
from a flexibility standpoint, how would that work?
So there's no ability for us to prove intent. So if somebody makes a minor, I mean, this happens all the time. I'm not sending them to court for that. It's really for, we would use this whole section for when in this, city manager, remember this is the section that's granted to the city manager, not staff, that if in the city manager's opinion, all of the other sections aren't working and something needs to be done, then at this point, he would hold that revocation public hearing and actually serve it. So that language, again, is from our legal team, and I wouldn't be able to answer why we don't have the word, what was the specific, I think it actually might be on the next one. Well, I don't, oh, there it is, intentional misrepresentation, yeah. Did I help? Yep, it sounds like you want to, it's getting to be a late night.
Yeah, want something real quick, but, yep.
Okay. So there's the 3 strike, the intentional misrepresentation, and then he mentioned in the comments too about this 5-day minimum for being noticed, and he was concerned that if we put it in the mail, sometimes the PTC mail doesn't get to somebody within 5 days. He recommended a 20-day. No problem with that. We could make that recommendation. Do you all have any comment on that or concern about changing from 5 to 20 days? No?
No.
Okay. The concern about whether or not the short-term rental could operate when a notice of revocation has been issued. Right now, the ordinance is drafted so that if you've been notified that you may lose your permit, and here's going to be a public hearing, then you have to stop operations of that. And now, this is based on, he believes that that shouldn't happen, that they should be able to continue operations. Our belief is that if you're at this point right now, that you've received a notice of a revocation and you've already matched up and started to strike out, that if there were ever unsafe practices occurring, we would not want those to continue. And so our recommendation is to keep it as is. What are y'all's thoughts? This may be a policy decision too. I mean, it's kind of a bigger, if you've been put on notice that there's something, the city believes there's something wrong, do we allow them to continue operating until that hearing, or do we tell them to stop?
I mean, so this is 3 violations within a 12-month period was what we're talking about, right?
Well, yes, or if we find that somehow there was fraud involved.
So really from a standpoint, it's more of the safety of the
Visitors.
people who are renting
Yes.
from that standpoint, yeah. I think based upon that, it's to me, it's acceptable for that.
No strong opinions one way or the other? Okay. Or acceptable. So there is a punishment if you are found guilty and it's been revoked, then it's not revoked just for 12 months, but it's actually revoked for 24 months. he believes that we should add some language about after all appeals are exhausted. My point is that if at any point an appeal is found in your favor, then this would no longer apply to you. So it seemed kind of an unnecessary change to the text. We heard this tonight. There are requirements for the short-term rental of storing your garbage in lidded containers outside of view of a public street. They mentioned that they should be applied to all properties. I don't disagree. However, this is the process that we're looking at right now is strictly for short-term rentals. And should council want to broaden that to a citywide, then that would begin a different conversation. So at this point, staff has recommended keeping this. Any strong opposition to that? No. Okay. Guest register. This is where we talked about us requiring more information than Airbnb collects. That we are requiring not only their names, but their current addresses and the vehicle description and plate number. The online platforms do not automatically record this information. And so he recommends that you only track the primary guest name. This has come up, and the PD's opinion is that having this information would be helpful if there ever were any kind of criminal investigations. And yes, you can, as a owner and operator of a short-term rental, you can require additional information. So we do recommend keeping this. Of course, just as it is right now. Any strong opinions? No, for or against? Okay.
It's a lot of information. The thing that I'm kind of hung up on is the current addresses part. Maybe if it's just like if they're parked there, then the license plate could be enough. But just my thoughts.
Well, and honestly, if we get that license plate number, we can find, the PD can
Right.
pull who's
Exactly.
where they live. So I can see that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, the question came up about allowing the sale or even just service of food. This is because we don't want to trigger these to be called tourist accommodations by the health department. So we put this language in here so that the people who run short-term rentals don't have to now all of a sudden go through the health department inspections. Because then anytime they do this, they require, kitchen requirements, there's a lot. And so we actually felt that was burden, and so we put this language in here to keep us out of that classification from the health department. Moving on, parking on paved property or paved surface. I think that just respectfully disagree with the interpretation. He was saying that a hard surface automatically means impervious. In fact, it refers back to the existing zoning ordinance that defines paved to include things that he mentioned, such as gravel, porous, paving blocks, etc. So I think this is just a difference of interpretation, and we recommend keeping it as is. Okay? There came up a question, it's unclear if the failure of the owner or local contact person to respond to calls or complaints, if that pertains to a single short-term rental property, or does it somehow, if they don't reply to a complaint on this property, that somehow puts all of their properties in jeopardy. Our code enforcement, our violation, it applies only to the property on which it's occurring. It wouldn't somehow trickle down to all of their others. So I wanted to provide that clarification. There was another question about whether or not, what's a citation? Ms. Sorensen asked, what is a citation? Is it just a complaint from neighbors? It is not. It has to be received there have to be 3 or more separate complaints received from at least 2 different property owners within a 6-month period. He recommended that we add validated complaints. I am absolutely happy to add that language. I think that's a good clarification. And as such, that would need to be reviewed by legal, but any changes that we make tonight will be reviewed by legal.
So validated means it's
legitimate.
recorded
It's
somewhere?
yeah, and that
or-
happens. Code enforcement gets a lot of complaints that when they go out there, they find that they're just not valid. There were incorrect information or
Okay.
just not. And so I'm happy to add that change to the language.
So would we say validated by code enforcement then? Is that how we
A
would?
valid, a substantiated
Okay,
complaint,
yeah.
I think that would help.
Got it.
Oh my goodness, was that the end? That was the end? Look at that. So that was the point-by-point complaint, recommendations that we received this afternoon. And
Thank you, Robin.
I've recorded some of your comments about the different kind of bigger issues, and am wondering what it is, how you all would like to proceed.
I'm going to say personally, for me, I would honestly like some additional time
Sure.
to review it, especially all the comments that we received, all of the information that we just went over, perhaps some additional research as to, what else is out there. And I think that's something we do ask quite a bit. What are other jurisdictions, what are other municipalities doing?
I have a spreadsheet of all of the, I can share that with you all.
Because we're not
Yeah.
in a bubble when it comes to that. Everyone is experiencing the same thing no matter where you're at. So we're not unique in that standpoint. So I know personally I would like some more time to
Sure.
go through this. But it's up to my fellow commissioners what you feel also.
I agree with you, yes.
Commissioner Reeves?
Yes, and I think access to the information that you did and your research on the various municipalities will be a great benefit. We wouldn't have to start from zero.
Commissioner Hamner?
I'll support you guys on that.
And please understand, it's not that we're, that we know this is very important to all of us. Those who have properties that they rent as Airbnb, as well as their neighbors, as well as just Peachtree City as a whole. So we want to make sure that when we go forward, just as council, just as the planning department does, that we make the right decisions and the right recommendations as we proceed with this. So I would like to see, would we look at a continuation?
So
Or how would we
the
best way
public
to-
hearing
Mhm.
has officially been held. And I would recommend that we continue it, which basically bring it back to your next scheduled meeting as a workshop item. And if we do it as a workshop item, then even though it's not a public hearing, you all could still listen to public comment at that point. It would be a little less formal than it was tonight,
Right.
but it would still allow for that sort of communication to occur.
Okay. So I guess I'm looking for, do we have a motion to continue I lost the number, PH 23-07 to the next Peachtree City Planning Commission meeting?
Yes. I'd like to make a motion to continue this topic. I don't remember the exact numbers.
Yeah, PH 2307, that's okay.
Correct, for the next meeting.
Okay. So we have a motion to continue to the next meeting. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second, okay. All those in favor of continuation, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, we will continue this at the next commission meeting. Thank you. And I want to thank everyone who took the time out this evening to come. Really appreciate your input, your comments, to be able to make the right decision going forward. Thank you. Okay.
3 more items.
Bless their hearts,
Three-
I don't,
three-
are our applicants even still here?
So, no old agenda items. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing. No
No,
old
you're right.
agenda items, yeah.
You were right.
So now we are on to new agenda.
I think my applicant has left the room.
Do you- Since you're presenting, you want to present, and I'll go see if I can wrangle them up? Okay.
Do you want to,
Very well.
should we take a 5-minute break?
Yeah.
Are we able to take a
Yeah,
5
let's
minute?
5 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay, we're going to take a few minute break until, yeah, we're gonna take a 5-minute break. Yeah, we'll take a 5-minute break. Thank you. Okay.
Fulton County? Okay.
Thank you. Yep.
Okay.
That, I'm not sure.
Yes.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. And when you say you emailed it to the city council, was that recently or way back when? Okay. Okay. All right. I'll look for it because, yeah, I'm interested to see what other municipalities are doing.
No, I think subleasing would mean you're renting it and someone else is renting it again,
that's what,
right?
Like we all.
Oh, yeah. So if you're renting it and then they put it on Airbnb,
Kind of like what
yes,
happened
that's
with-
subleasing.
Yeah.
That's not what happened with the smoke.
It's on
Right,
the property.
right,
Yeah.
right. That's why I wanted a little explanation because I read about it as well.
So he's selling
Their
it.
house. Yeah, that's where the no social.
Yeah.
They can then turn around, okay, that's where, okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, you know, hearing it, I'm feeling that.
Right. Right. Well, I appreciate the information because that's what I'm looking for, some
You have to talk it out.
I mean,
examples
most
of
of
other
our commission
municipalities
meetings, I mean,
that
we
did
have very
and
few,
did it in our.
we really do. We have very
Yeah,
few
very
that
few
get,
we have
yeah.
to talk about.
Gone past 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Well, and that's, yeah, and that's why when that email came, and that's what my comment back to you was, what are our options this evening, right off the bat? Because it
Yeah, I was
was,
trying to read through everything. I'm like, I don't think I can
it
read
was
through all
one of
this.
those where, since there's been so many workshops,
But
new
I
things have happened from the workshops to what was presented.
I must have missed something because I don't remember anything about it. Oh, so what? So, oh, well, I thought I was like, oh, okay. I was like, I don't remember this.
Council's been discussing this for a while.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
you know, process-wise,
It's good. It's good. We gotta talk it out. We gotta talk it out. We'll figure it out. What?
Right. Hey, neighbor. I'm good. How
No,
are you?
yeah, it's
Yeah,
good.
it's
It's good.
not
Let's
a-
talk it out.
Well, and that's what some of my
Good.
questions were. It's like, you know, legal's already taken care of this. Yeah, well, I'm sure he has.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
See, this is my first I've heard of it.
Oh, I'm sure. So it's kind of like,
Yes,
okay, you know,
I
it's,
didn't
we
realize,
appreciate
because in
it,
my
but
mind, I think
it's
of
already,
Airbnbs and stuff
if
being
it's been
like
reviewed, then we'll go
at the
down, then,
beach or in the mountains, or, you know, but it can be anywhere, I guess.
sort of thing.
Well, I appreciate the information. Thank you.
Yeah, well, yeah, because, you know, somebody looked at our house when we thought we were gonna sell and move my mother-in-law.
We'll see.
And he was working at Trillis, and they were from Hawaii, and they just, the neighbors.
Is it just 3 building elevations? Is that what's on here?
There's never a simple answer.
No,
There's not.
okay, we bought it, how much do you want for it? I'm like, wait, whoa.
That's not too bad.
You can't just do anything you want to. It has to be within these bounds, but you can go here and
get the blood
really start doing this.
Jumping jack.
I think
Yeah. Well, that was their friend. So the people that bought that house are her friends from Hawaii that came and looked at our
Well,
house.
it's always good to have
We'll
information.
take it, and
I
I'm
mean,
like,
you know,
okay.
and I'm
husband's not
open
with
to
you, your daughter's not
discussing the
with you,
fee
and
number.
we're
I
not
mean, I think
ready.
council needs to discuss it.
it is.
Right? They're the ones gonna be making the final decision. Yeah. I think
So,
that's
I have a lot to say. It's building elevators.
I know.
These type of regulations in a community like this, I like to see how other cities have done it as well.
Angry, glaring face or things.
Thank you, I think.
Yeah. I told him I wanted to go play golf with him one time. I'm gonna have to.
And that's how this all started?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
It didn't start on that, but I
So what
told
was the
him I
reaction to
did want to
that?
play golf with him. Yeah.
Well, at least it came with a nice salary.
Okay.
You know, moving into this role.
You're getting paid for this?
All right, well, that would be interesting. Well, if that does happen, you might want to consider that to know about his work. We might be interested in sitting at least some of us, maybe. Okay. All right, thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Right there. You're welcome.
Okay, back in.
That's what I'm gonna double check.
Which means I can't eat. I can't eat anything. I'm starving.
How's work?
Busy.
Yeah.
This was in Germany last week.
Oh, yeah.
I'm still recovering from the jet lag, and I leave for California in less than 36 hours. Yeah. But it's good.
More power to you.
Yeah, it's good.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I think we're ready.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, we have some building elevations. Jefferson Architecture has brought us some revised elevations for the Royal condominiums for our review. The project site is located at 215 North Lake Drive, the existing Partners Pizza Building, as you all know. The current zoning is LUC, Limited Use Commercial District 34, seen here in the yellow outline, right there. Can I get that thing to change to the green dot? There we go. There it is. All right. Next slide. All right. My understanding is part of the reason for the revisions has to do with cost, and part of it has to do with addressing some concerns that the owner felt the community had with the size and look of the warehouse style that was originally approved. You can see here, I'm showing the proposal, the proposed revisions on the top, and the originally approved elevations on the bottom for comparison. You'll see that in both of these slides. The revisions result in a softer, more pedestrian-friendly development with a traditional look using contemporary materials and styling. You can see how the massing of the building in the proposed revision is well divided with changes in color and materials. The overall building has an appearance of separate buildings as the different sections of the buildings step in and out. You can see how this comes forward a bit and then it steps back and then steps back out and in and out. And as the colors and the materials change with each section, and each section has a different window style as well. You can also see, I'm going to switch to the next slide here. You can also see that there's a distinct base, middle, and top that further reduces the bulk of the building. The middle is set back. You can see, can sort of tell in this slide, this middle section here is set back, and there's an outdoor space for the residential on the second floor here. You can also see it up here how it's set back. Again, this is the base down here, the retail or commercial level, residential, and then the upper level here, the top section. The fact that the middle section is set back puts an emphasis on the ground floor tenant spaces here. And each section of the building has a unique canopy and storefront design, making those tenant spaces very distinctive. And the wide open sidewalk, which you can see here in this area, allows for some outdoor dining space perhaps and some gathering area, which makes the space more user-friendly. And that's about all I have. So staff is of the opinion that these Oh, well, let's talk about, wait a minute, I think I have one more slide. Yep, let's talk about the building materials. The materials are, except for, well, let's talk about the rear here. So it's similar. They still have the garages out back, but prior there was an elevator shaft on the back elevation here. And that elevator shaft is removed, and now it's just internal here. So they're hidden more in the center of the building. So that is gone from the rear elevation. Let's see. So for building materials, except for the garages in the rear and the roof level, way up here at the top, the building, and those areas will be hardy siding. Other than those areas, the building will be at least 80% or more brick or stone on all sides. And the palette, seen here on the side, is soft and neutral with a darker brick and metal accents. See the sort of the softer colors of the brick, and there's a darker accent, light colored stone, and then the hardy siding and the dark slate accent metal. And then that's all we have there. So staff is of the opinion that the revised elevations for the mixed-use development at 215 North Lake Drive meet the architectural requirements of the land development ordinance and recommend approval of agenda item 23-09-03. And I believe the applicant has material samples for you as well.
Good evening, Jefferson Brown, Jefferson Architecture. We thank you for this opportunity to present tonight. The owner, Jim Royal, was here, and he had to move on to a previous engagement. But he just wanted to say that he commissioned us to kind of go back. He had heard the comments and the community comments. He loves this community. He asked us to re-articulate the front, and this is the result of meeting with him and listening to some of the earlier concerns about it was a big box and not as inviting and warm. And hopefully you agree that we accomplished that with this new design. I do have some samples here that I'll turn around so that you can see them.
Okay.
This shows the finish. This is actually we did not get a hardy sample in the color that we want, but this is a Nietzsche sample. We're showing this for texture and color. This would be what's on the rooftop.
Okay.
But we want to use a material that's going to stand up.
Okay. Going to have any questions for the applicant? Any commissioners? Want to go ahead, Commissioner Hamner?
Real quick, regarding the elevator shaft.
Yes.
Can you explain a little bit more in terms of like, obviously it was on the outside previously, and then it was supposed to go, if memory serves me right, from the backyard, the garage area, it was connected to that, and then would go up. Like, is that still the case? And then any additional details you can share?
It is the case. What we did is we wanted to reduce the massing of the garages. So what we did is we pushed that elevator into the exterior wall. Mm-hmm. So it's actually just on the other side of the wall instead of being on the exterior side, it's on the interior side. So when you're leaving your garage, you walk into a 5-foot vestibule, you walk through, into the elevator, go up to the first floor, second floor, and or roof. So this configuration has a single elevator going from garage to rooftop. Multiple stops.
Commissioner Chris?
No questions.
Commissioner Johnson?
So let's see, it would be the dark colored, like the gray area, it's not on this slide. It's the one that's different colored, kind of, in the middle. Is that a lobby or is that an actual residence?
It is a lobby
Okay.
on the lower level to the second floor, but above that is the administrative office.
Oh, okay.
So there is an office space to manage the properties, but it's a one floor.
Okay. And then the slide that shows that second floor patio,
On the front?
all right, see up there on the top left-hand corner. So is that going to be all bricked in? So go around the corner. Laura,
It is.
kinda-
And you can
right
see.
there. Yeah.
Yes, and you can see that lower level on the original design, that was kind of left open because it was a warehouse design. And the architectural elements for warehouse, that was the right thing to do. Now, we've softened it, made it more pedestrian feeling. Now we're actually going to be able to use that front wall. It'll create separation, and then those are in the parking and looking up, there's privacy areas. So if someone has shoes left out or something outside their door before they go in, the public can't see it now. So it serves two things. Did that answer your question?
Well, like where the people are congregating, like up there.
Okay, that's
That,
Partners
is that-
Pizza. That's a mezzanine for Partners Pizza. So
Okay.
there's a stairwell that you can have food and service on the lower level, or you can go to the second
But
floor and
only
have
on the
mezzanine.
outside?
But it's on the exterior.
That's what I was
And that concept didn't change at all
Okay.
from the original. Footprint's the same, square footages are the same.
Okay.
Good
And then I
It's a
have-
great question.
Yeah, I have one more question. So on the garages, which are on the back side, right?
Correct.
So are they going to be all solid doors? Is that what I'm seeing? Like just
They are.
solid?
They're a wood grain. They're a wood grain look. It's a little bit hard to see on this one.
Yeah.
And what that has, we tried to show the renderings so that you could see there's a space behind that gable. And we're trying to hide the mechanical units this time. Instead of them being out towards where the public could see them before, where they were on the ground, now we have created this, if you will, the peak of the roof is creating a parapet wall to hide the residential units now.
Right, right, okay. This is just my personal opinion. I think it would look great if the doors had some type of glass to kind of complement the windows. Like it kind of looks like just storage buildings or something like that. I think that would look good. But other than
Okay.
that, I think it all looks great.
Thank you.
Commissioner Reeves?
My comment is just that it's always great to hear that an applicant is responsive to some of the comments that we hear
Yes,
when
ma'am.
things are addressed. And I think the new look is great.
Thank you.
I don't have any questions, and I know we had a couple comments. Any comments, Commissioner Cruz?
Just looks really great. Nothing further.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hamner?
Yeah, I know this is the third version that we've seen. In just my personal opinion, this is the best version that
Thank
we've
you.
seen, so this looks really good.
Thank you.
And I'd like to commend Mr. Royal for allowing you to go ahead and go back and rework the design that you had originally done. I think I was, and maybe a couple others, were, I wouldn't say disappointed, but that's kind of the word as to just the overall design of a warehouse when there were so many other opportunities, since this was such a unique and really the first of its kind.
Correct.
To really come into Peachtree City, and here's an open design book to go ahead and do something unique with it. And I really didn't see that in the original design, and really wanted to see something more. And I think I told you that, I want to see more.
You did.
And I really commend you for giving us more. I really like the design. I like the color differences between the units. It really does set them off as separate units instead of just one big brick building. And just, doing those little nuances where you've now used that front wall as a little bit of a shield.
Yes.
Using different canopies for the different businesses, which set them apart, I think really, really helps that out also. So, beautiful design. Really, really beautiful design. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. That being said, any other comments?
No other comments.
I mean, the only thing I was going to say, I really like the wide sidewalks They look awesome. I do like the canopies. I think it just gives contrast and dimension. Love that. Yeah, I think it all looks great. Thank you.
Okay, so do we have a motion? And let me get the number here correct. Do we have a motion to approve 230903, updated building elevations, Royal Condominiums, 215 North Lake Drive?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second?
Second. So we have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor of approving 230903, updated building elevations, Royal Condominiums, 215 North Lake Drive, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, next we have some more elevations, also from Jefferson. This project is located in the Kedron Village Shopping Center development. It is zoned GC General Commercial. The parcel is, it's adjacent to Highway 74 here, but the building is not highly visible from the highway due to the landscape buffer, especially in the summer. The building doesn't sit real close to the highway. Anyway, moving along. This is an existing building that they would like to refurbish. It was built in 1990 as a bank. You can see the existing building here on the left-hand side. The proposal is to refresh and modernize the building. They would like to paint the brick, renovate the entrances, and replace the shingle roof with a metal roof. By renovating the entrances with a new roof line and a stone facade for one of them, it'll give both tenant entrances prominence and give the overall building a more contemporary look. Section 725 of the Land Development Ordinance strongly encourages high-quality design and development to enhance property values excuse me, and long-term economic assets along designated corridors, the designated corridor being Highway 74. Section 725 of the Land Development Ordinance also states, while diversity of architecture is encouraged, buildings in the same development should create a cohesive visual relationship. Before I switch sides, we'll just look at this a little bit more closely. So this original the original building is a sort of a medium peach-colored brick with an asphalt shingle roof and white trim. And here we have the new look. We'll talk about the building materials in a minute. I want to talk about the neighbors. So although darker in color, the Wendy's and the World of Beverage on either side of this property have a modern design already. The Wendy's added a corrugated metal panel and signature red blade wall in 2016, and this is Wendy's here. It's to the right of this building. And the World of Beverage, which is on its left, was built in 2018, and it sports bronze corrugated metal and Nichiha wood-looking accent panels. So both of these on either side of this building already have a nice modern look to them. So all three of the buildings would be in sort of a more modern design style and would be more cohesive than the existing building with these two as it is now. Going back to see the existing building. So talking about the proposed colors. So the Section 728 of the Land Development Ordinance states facade colors should be low reflectance and subtle, neutral or earth tone colors, and that natural brick should not be painted. The proposed color for the paint is Eider White by Sherwin-Williams. is proposed as the primary paint color for the building. Eider white has sort of purplish gray undertones, which makes it appear darker and more gray than a bright white. Therefore, it does have a lower reflectance. And the proposed stone veneer is a light color with a mix of hues that range from a, let me go back, there you go, from a lighter soft creams and golden umbers to a light coffee and sienna rusts. It doesn't show well on the screen though, that stone. It does have some color variations in it. It's not just white. And then paired with some dark bronzy accent, grayish bronze. It's dark gray with some brown undertones. So the palette is very neutral. So while the proposal does meet the intent of the design standards to enhance the visual appearance of the community, as well as the commercial appeal of the individual establishment, and it does satisfy several should statements in the ordinance, Section 728 of the Land Development Ordinance states that the natural brick should not be painted. Therefore, the approval of Agenda Item 23-09-04 is at the discretion of the Planning Commission.
Okay, thank you. Jefferson, would you like to step up again?
Let the owner speak.
Oh, okay. If you could, sure, state your name.
Sure. I'm Steve Hale, and our business is wealth management advisors and financial planners. I've lived in the county 39 years and officed in Peachtree City in Tyrone for the last 20 years. And so our purpose really was, we felt like we bought that building in May of last year, and we feel like it's probably the most in need of renovation or updating of anything in that Kedron Shopping Center. So we were decided to hire Jefferson and try to improve that. And so we're really just trying to upgrade it and make it fit more of the community, fit more of the quality of the type of business we do and our clientele. So that was really our purpose for bringing this tonight.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? I'm going to go ahead and start with Commissioner Johnson.
So just a couple for staff, like I was just wondering about the two, and they maybe should statements about why not painting, should not paint natural brick, and why non-reflective. I'm just wondering, I'm not familiar with that, so wondering.
So should not paint, I mean, that was an aesthetic decision that was made at the time that the ordinance was drafted many years ago.
Okay.
You know, historical brick, like really historical brick, when you painted it, you actually damaged the building because today buildings are not built to breathe like they were so many years ago. And so maybe that's harkens back to that, but at this point, with the technology, building technology we have, it's really an aesthetic decision. And then the low reflectance is just glare. It's you know, not necessarily good for human health to have a lot of glare.
Okay, well, that's why I was wondering. Yeah. I didn't know if, like, drivers by, like, is it just glaring? And so just wondering about that. Okay, and then will this be, and this could be for either, the only lighter colored building in Kedron Village?
Well, there's the professional sports. You can't see it from this property, but there is it's like a sports medicine type of building. It actually faces Georgian Parkway.
It's kind of around the
but
corner.
You leave Target, kind of going up a hill to get to, and it's right there on the right.
Okay, just wondering. I was trying to picture it myself and figure it out. Okay.
Palettes are very similar. The palettes are very similar.
Okay.
Yeah, those are my only questions.
Commissioner Reeves?
Yes, the only question I have for staff is similar to the painting of the bricks. Historically, has the Planning Commission approved projects where we approve projects with the bricks painted?
Well, we just updated the design guidelines on 54 West, and that starts at the intersection of 74 and goes west towards the county line, and we updated it to allow painted brick.
Thank you.
Commissioner Chris?
No questions.
Commissioner Hamner?
Also, no questions.
I guess the only question I have is why white? I've seen now this will be the third property just recently, and I think we're going to be talking about one here afterwards. But this will be the third property really going to the white palette. Is that a current trend that's happening in the industry, or is it a personal choice? And I guess question to Mr. Hale as well as to Jefferson is where does that stand?
When we created these elevations and these concepts, we didn't know that the other ones were in the queue, if you will. We were looking at its wealth management. It's a type of building that when you look at the building, architecture should communicate something to you. It should tell you what the expectation is, how the building is going to be used, and the people that are in it. And then we looked at the materials to reduce the glare and pull the brightness of it down. We looked at both buildings and we looked for cues there, and the copper, that roofing material and things like that, that became the cue to actually create a thread through all of them. So there was something that was common. The other thing is, how do you change the look of a pink building that's salmon? And then how do you do that without ripping off all of the brick, creating more of a problem, and then that totally moves us away from sustainability. And it seemed like actually the most responsible thing to do was to come back and use the bones of the building that was there and how could we really change it, modernize it, make it look clean and complement the neighbors. So that's how we kind of backed into that.
Okay.
It wasn't just one thing.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
Thank you.
comments? Commissioner Chris?
I live in the Kedron neighborhood. I think this is a great project to redesign this building. I go to the businesses surrounding it, and I have to admit, when I saw it, I didn't even recognize that it was there. So I think that this is a fantastic project. It looks great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Hamner?
Yeah, this is a great upgrade.
Thank you.
Commissioner Johnson?
Same. I think it looks great. It will really look good in this area.
Thank you.
Commissioner Reeves?
Same here. It looks great.
And I guess I'm going to move myself away from the other four. It's not that I don't like it.
Right.
I like the architectural upgrades. I personally am just not a fan of painted brick. I've always been more traditional when it comes to it, to the natural colors. I understand I go past that quite a bit.
Yes.
I always wondered, well, why that kind of color actually. But yeah, I've been down that road in HOAs with painted brick and issues regarding that. So it's one of those things just personally that I've always had a little bit of an issue with. And it's not that it doesn't look good, because it looks good. It's just one of those, I just hate putting paint on brick, because once you paint brick, you paint brick.
Correct.
And that's all you have. Okay. We go ahead and have a motion for approving.
I move to approve 23-09-04 as presented.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. We have a motion to approve and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Aye. Okay. The approves have it 4-1. Thank you very much. Okay.
All right, and finally, we have some more building elevations to look at. I'm sure everyone is familiar with West Park Walk Shopping Center, located at the intersection of 5474. I do want to point out that, I don't know if everybody knows that this section over here that contains Carrabba's is actually under separate management and is not included in this particular presentation. So sorry that it's also highlighted. We're looking at this portion right here. The property is zone GC, general commercial. And I don't have them here, but in your packet, I included some photos of the original building. Well, I mean, we have, for comparison, I've got the photos of the original materials, but in the very original building had a green metal roof, as you can still see on the Carrabba's, as you're probably familiar with. Anyway, so the shopping center was built in 1990, and there have been very few updates to the center over the years. The most significant ones were in 2013, when this iconic stair tower was added. You can see up in the upper left-hand corner with the identification signage there. And at that same time, there was a portion of the sign band was removed and replaced with the metal louvers that we've come to know. Brick accents and decorative metal support columns were added. That's all these things right here. And EFIS panels were repainted, and the metal roof, the green metal roof, was painted a new color apparently, or maybe it was painted green, I don't know. In 2016, the metal roof was replaced with the asphalt shingle roof that we see today due to some leak issues, and the Tuesday morning facade was updated in 2017 to add the pop-up area for signage that we also know today right here. The original building materials, the colors were two tones of brick. If you might probably remember the red-orange colored field brick. You can see it on this column here, and the blonde accent brick. And in addition, there was a light-colored EFIS sign band, a green metal railing on the second story, and a green stripe on the roof parapet. Kind of hard to see in these photos. But anyway, lots of colors going on, lots of materials going on. So the owners, it's under new management, and unfortunately the owners were not aware of our requirements for elevation approvals, and they have changed the paint color. They've painted the brick white. And with a sort of a dark gray accent color. And I've got some pictures here around the property, and again comparing to the original look as a reminder. We've got again that iconic. Now the paint job is not quite finished, and you'll see some things that aren't quite painted. Everything is being painted down even to the light poles. So I don't know, you can't see it very well in here, but these are still a brown color, and they will be painted as well. Railings, metal, stairwells, all kinds of stuff. You can tell this area hasn't been finished painted. These metal columns, I believe, are still the original color. This stairwell, this area right here, this facade right here isn't quite finished being painted. So you'll see some instances where it's not quite finished. But anyway, again, this is original. This is the new. Original, new, original, new, original, new. There's a few more. Here we go. And then here's a close-up. Shows the colors a little bit better. It's the darker gray and the white. And that's really all the pictures I have. Again, Section 728 of the Land Development Ordinance states that natural brick should not be painted. Therefore, approval is at the discretion of the Planning Commission. Should the Planning Commission approve the building elevations, staff recommends you consider the following for adoption, to perhaps paint the EFS sign band a color that is more similar to the roof color, so that it's not, so that it doesn't stand out quite as much. Whoops, wrong direction, sorry. This sign band right here.
No, up.
Up.
At the top of the roof. See, yeah, it's
Well,
how
like-
bright white it is.
This here. Or there. Not the louvered panels, or the louvered panels too.
No, I was above the roof. See how it?
Yeah, these.
Oh, above the roof.
Yeah, see, there's kind of like a parapet above the roof, and it's this kind of bright white stripe.
Where the Tuesday morning.
Do you mean here, or do you mean up
Yes,
here?
up there, there.
Yep, all the way to the
Oh,
top.
this?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Sorry, I thought you meant the sign band. Okay. The roof, a color to be approved by staff.
Thank you, Lord. Is the applicant here?
I'm Taylor Brown with Bridger Properties. We purchased the property in January of this year. I'm really here tonight, guys and ladies, sorry, to ask for your forgiveness. I apologize. It was a genuine mistake on our part to jump the gun and do this. We've done it in other municipalities. We certainly understand that the special charm of Peachtree City, so we do greatly apologize for not going through the full process, and we can ensure that it will never happen again. We paused the process as soon as we were contacted by code enforcement, making us aware of, the requirement to go through this process, and that's why you'll see it's not completely finished, and all signage and things like that, as we're, GDOT recently closed they're taking back to widen the road right there, so we'll obviously go through the full processes on everything. If there's any way to ensure that we, go through that process again, I don't, that's up to you guys, but genuinely here to apologize. And I think to answer your question, Commissioner Rittenhour, the painted white, what we've seen is it has a direct significant impact on tenant sales. I have a couple of emails from our tenants, and all the tenants have contacted us saying they've had a direct impact, and it's very inviting. More customers are drawn to the center, and as a result, tenants in our community do better business. So that's my piece. Again, I genuinely apologize, and I can ensure that it won't happen again, considering it would be me, the one doing it, so I apologize. Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and start with questions. Commissioner Hamner?
No questions.
Commissioner Chris?
No questions.
Commissioner Reeves?
No questions.
Commissioner Johnson?
I just have one question. So you mentioned the light poles would be painted. Will they be gray or white?
It was a darker gray to match to the accent color.
Okay, so it'll be the
That's
dark.
part of the project that went on pause as soon as we were contacted by the county.
Okay. And so the bottom sign, which you first had,
Well, I guess
won't be painted.
No, I guess what we're suggesting is this white strip at the top
Not the other band.
to be painted to blend, similar to how the old look was, how it kind of blended with the roof and doesn't stand out quite so much.
But so on that smaller picture in the middle, that in the middle won't be.
Correct.
Yeah, just the top.
Yeah, it's just that
Okay,
very top.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, just wanted to clarify.
My mistake, I apologize. I do want to, so the owners of the adjacent parcel, when we found out about this, they were the phase 3 of, the Tuesday morning space, as you guys know, Tuesday morning closed on us at the end of June. So an effort to kind of revitalize the center after that as we reposition and try to figure out what to do from a tenant perspective. The owners of the Carrabba's parcel, I believe, submitted today, and they're matching to our same color scheme as well, if approved.
Any other questions? And you basically answered the question, because, or at least two of the questions I had is that, I was going to ask you, is this your only, and I'm sure it's not, only commercial property that you've done major renovation to?
It is not.
Okay. And it was, the second follow-up was, well, if you have, then, did you not realize that there are requirements, for certain things, especially, looking around, you see the different earth tones of the different other buildings some have been changed a bit.
Yep.
But that was basically, the question I was going to ask you, so.
Right. And I mean, we've painted in other municipalities and just haven't, for signage certainly, and we certainly would plan on any new signage would do that. We just had not had to do this in other municipalities to do that.
Okay, that's it for questions. Comments? Commissioner Reeves?
No comments.
Commissioner Johnson?
So I will be honest, like at first, because it's a lot of building, and I actually do think it needed to be brightened up. I think a lot of places in Peachtree City could stand some brightening up, right? I was already going to make the comment that I was sure this was done to draw business. I mean, we do have some new businesses opening up down there in Fisher Road, which is not Peachtree City, and so that could draw away from us. So we need to do some things, right? So I admire you for doing this. I wish it wasn't quite as bright a white, like we were saying, like the Sherwin-Williams. If you had gone through the proper process, maybe not quite as bright. But I do like that it is offset with some grays, some darker grays. So I'm glad to see it being brightened up, and I really do hope that it will continue to draw business and the tenants will continue to see an increase in sales.
I do think on the white, I'd certainly understand this color has been used in multiple other centers, and it does age extremely well. Today, it may seem a little bit bright. It does age in a much more toned, or earth toning, I guess, but it does age very nicely.
Okay. Yeah, that's all the comments I had.
Commissioner Hamner?
Yeah, when I saw this being painted, driving down 74, I was like, that's a lot of white. So it's good to hear, of course, like it can age very well in that regard. I do support the staff recommendation to, do the part up on top with gray. I think that'll look better than for it to be white, so I do support that. And obviously, again, I don't think there was any ill intent in terms of the way that this went about, but having said that, and to echo what some of the others said, the investment and the refreshing of this, I think, is going to be really good. I was actually at Launch and Go for several years, so I'm very familiar with this complex and also how dated it looked. So ultimately, again, I think it was an honest mistake, but I think the ultimate outcome of this is going to be very good. So thank you for doing this, and I'm glad to hear as well that you're getting positive feedback from the businesses there, because we want good businesses in Peachtree City.
It's been great. Sorry to interrupt, but on the back side of it, there's not as much traffic.
Yeah.
Very few places have 80,000 cars a day, but on the back, that multiple of the tenants back there have said people are driving in to kind of look around. It's like Star of India, for example. They were one of the people that said that they've seen a significant sales impact since this happened a month ago.
It's good.
Mr. Chris?
Thanks. The attorney in me has to say ignorance of the law is no excuse, but I do appreciate your apology. I've seen it driving by, just like Commissioner Hamner, and I think that the refresh is great to see here in Peachtree City. It's good to see reinvestment into our city, especially in properties that are highly visible, and this is one that's extremely highly visible. So, I like the refresh. I do think that staff recommendation is appropriate, and I think we should approve it with the staff recommendation. But other than that, once again, I enjoy seeing investment into our community. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Comments, and you've heard I don't like painted brick, but if I were to paint brick, yeah, personally, I probably would have not gone with extra white. It is a very bright color. Something a little more muted would have, in my palettes, would have probably done a little better. It has cleaned it up considerably. I guess, and I know you say it ages well, but that is a very, very high trafficked intersection, and it's not going to get any better in the future. So I look at just normal pollution from cars and everything else that comes through there, and how that white is going to look. I just actually had new gutters and downspouts put on my house, and I changed from white to black. And one of the reasons why I constantly was trying to keep my downspouts and my gutters clean. So just looking at that, and again, how that's going to look after it weathers a bit, and quite frankly gets dirty is a bit of a concern of mine. And I agree 100%, you know, going ahead and painting that top band a darker color to match the roof, I think will definitely mute that a little bit more. I think trying to do anything else with adding, you know, a band here or there is going to make it look like a big, you know, candy cane of white and grays, which we definitely don't want. That is a very unique shopping center in its design. You know, I don't think we'll see ones like that ever again, which may or may not be a bad thing, I don't know. But it's a very, very unique design of a shopping center, you know, probably even back in its day. So doing a refresh, and the good thing is, like you said, the restaurants and the you know, the businesses there are seeing more input coming into them, which is always something we want to see. The last thing we want is someone suffering, especially with everything in the economy and everything right now. We want to see those businesses thrive and grow. So do appreciate that. Thank you. Okay. With that being said, I'd like to have a motion, if we could, to approve 230905 West Park Walk.
I make a motion that we approve agenda item 230905, building elevations for West Park Walk Shopping Center at 200 Commerce Drive, with the staff recommendation to paint the EIFS sign band a gray color similar to the roof color, and the color to be approved by staff.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve and a second. All those in favor signified by aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Aye. The approvals have it. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, next, our next meeting.
So our next meeting, we're going to have the workshop for the continued item from today. And we will have some new members. Well, we'll have one new alternative member. And normally what we do is a Planning Commission 101. And I always think this is good for a refresh for existing tenured members. It's good for the public to get a little refresh on what your role is, and it's certainly helpful to the new members.
Okay, and do we have a date yet for that next? Is it in 2 weeks?
Oh, yeah,
or-
it's our regular scheduled meeting.
Regular scheduled?
October 9th?
9.
9.
9th.
Yep.
October 9th. All
Perfect,
right.
okay. Well, thank you. We're gonna go ahead. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion carried. Motion.